Welcome to GGN. Today is Wednesday, December 18th, 2013. Ready to go here? Got a bunch of articles for you, and they're going to be tied nicely together. Nice story form. The first one is kind of obvious news, which is about the chemical weapons attack being staged to provoke attention so they can disarm Syria. But, like I said, they're good guys. The good guy and the bad cop, or good cop, bad cop, so they're good cop. So they're going to keep saying this stuff. At least that's just my own theory. But Russia's lashing out at the U.S. and its allies on the UN Security Council over who to blame for chemical weapons attack this year. So they told the council on August 21st the attack that led to Syria giving up its chemical weapons stockpile was staged in a large-scale provocation. Like I said, they were never really going to attack them with all those weapons there. They needed to remove them in order to attack them. And it just weakened Iran's ally. And then, like I said, the whole thing, Iran happened next. Now look at what's happening with everything now in South Africa. Mali was always kind of there. Now then it was CARE, the Central African Republic. French troops there. Now all of a sudden the South Sudan. I mean, come on, dude. Seriously. All of a sudden Africa's lightening up, right? I mean, it was already kind of going right after Syria gave up the weapons. That's why I said that's it. They're moving on. They're done with Syria. Then the Iran thing came. People think that there was, Iran somehow made out, and that was all, Iran forcing others to come to the table. No, they were asked to come to the table, and they did it. And that's why I thought it was a loss for them. That's why they're moving on to Africa. And what? China. You see right here, right? New tensions in Eastern Europe over Russian missiles. There was other articles too. It was about stuff in China heating up, North Korea heating up. So you see the Asia theater and the African theater heating up. So that should tell you something as far as viewing Syria and the Iranian deals as some kind of win or victory for Iran and the anti-Western powers. That's why I think even the whole thing between China and the U.S. and Russia and the U.S., I think it's just there's some seriousness to it as far as who's going to control the world economy. But right now there's just the East and the West, the two trading blocs, and they have a mutual understanding for the most part. But it says here that they compared it to manipulation of public opinion that led up to the U.S. invasion of Iraq. Okay, then we have this kind of another more big news. Assad must stay. So what's going on here? West tells Syria rebels Assad must stay. West is open to Assad running for re-election. So this is not really out of nowhere. We talked about this a couple months ago about how they've kind of changed their tune about they don't really care whether Assad steps down, but the rebels do. Some do not even seem to mind if he runs again next year, noted the SNC, Syrian National Coalition member. That's not sitting well with the SNC, but it may not matter. And you have Western diplomats confirming the shift, saying that these rebels have been warned that any transitional administration would have to include a major presence from the Alawites and that Assad could stay as president with diminished powers. If they reject this plan, they will lose most of the West. They say that it's basically a signal reflecting the dwindling confidence in the secular rebels' ability to accomplish anything on their own. This appears to be only one of the possibilities the West is exploring, with both the U.S. and Britain openly talking to the Islamist rebels and backing them as the new pro-West rebels. So this is kind of the same thing coming from foreign policy, U.S. weighing closer ties with hardline Islamists in Syria. They said after all this infighting, it's alarmed U.S. observers concerning that radical Salafists do not share U.S. values and is dismayed supporters of the Free Syrian Army who believe the moderates were set up to fail. And remember the area that was taken by the Islamic Front rebels? The U.S. wanted to talk with them or make deals with them, but it says here, a U.S. ambassador says Syria's Islamic Front rejects talks. Then you have a Syrian fighter defecting to Al-Qaeda link group. Once powerful Free Syrian Army commander Jamal has pledged allegiance to the ISIL fighters. So I like how they do this. They're basically saying that the Free Syrian Army, is defecting to Al-Qaeda. So support Al-Qaeda. That's our man. Kind of like we just mentioned in that first article, the pro-U.S. rebels or terrorists. He's a charming rebel. He's playful, right? What else does it say? He has humor and free spirit. If he's joining the groups that were beheading people, I don't know why you'd want to get mixed up in that. We've also covered before about Free Syrian Army wanting to join the Assad government or regime to fight these foreigners. Al-Nusra Front commander is killed or has been killed. Mohammed Hayeri in the southern city of Dara. Then Turkey, something that we already knew, but despite past denials, Turkish foreign minister admits in a UN report detailing military support to the Syrian rebels, they supplied 47 tons of weapons to these Islamic rebels. Saudi Arabia warns it will act against West's policy in the Middle East, and this is something that we've also covered, so we don't have to go too far into it. So they say that they're risking the stability of the Middle East. I don't know how much leverage they really have anymore, which is why I think that they kind of went to Iran and Syria, and I think maybe they feel that they're more important now, have more to offer them. I think that they're concerned that what they created as far as the Salafist terrorists, they're that along with them not having as much oil, like I said, and are no longer significant to the U.S., their economy could get really bad, and all the Salafists could come and try to overthrow them. And if they really are, actually, some people will say that they're Jews, then that's even more of a reason why they should be scared, dealing with the West and that. Because even though much of these Salafists, these rebels, they wear sunglasses and jeans and go shopping and scream, anti-West slogans, and sometimes get aided by them, they still, that's how they do the recruiting. That's how they overthrow governments sometimes. Now, this is just my opinion and commentary, so I may, I'm not saying that I'm 100% right or right at all. This is just my opinion, so we'll see. Both Egypt and the U.S. are reviewing their relations. This is another relationship that's kind of gone by the wayside, I think, by design. Egypt and the U.S. are reviewing their relations. Both countries benefit from the strategic partnership, Egypt said. No doubt we're in a state in which both sides are revising their concepts about the relationship. The Senate passes a 2-year budget deal. It's official. They sent the president a budget deal that scales back spending cuts, whatever. It all has to do with it's going to prevent the kind of budget brinkmanship that's prevailed over the past 3 years. So, again, like I said before, the Iran deal, because of that, they shored up the Western Zionists, shored up a bunch of money, and I don't think that we're going to have a whole another government shutdown, as they called it, even though the government didn't shut down. Roadside bomb kills 3 Iranian troops in border area. The last month and a half, I've covered articles like this. They're coming in at least once a week. Iranian border troops are getting killed. The Revolutionary Guard. Then to Bahrain. We were talking about how they were building up bases. U.S. is investing some heavy cash there and expanding a base. British, and then also Bahrain was trying to push for a Gulf Cooperation Union with Oman and all them. British government says unrest is likely in Bahrain. They're advising its citizens in Bahrain to be on alert for the potential for violent anti-government demonstrations. It was in northern Bahrain. Times and places are unknown, but are likely to be in and around villages at dark. Homemade bomb wounds 2 policemen in Bahrain, and that's the 17th, so yesterday. 2 policemen. Speaking of policemen, we get all this carnage numbers of people being killed there in Iraq. 50 killed, 300 wounded, and one bombing. I guess if there's anything positive to pull out of this is this guy making himself as a human shield. Most people are just making themselves into human bombs. Iraqi policeman uses himself as a human shield to protect pilgrims from a suicide bomber. So he had threw his arms around the bomber right before the attack. It still killed 5 people, wounded 10. He was 34, was married, and had 2 children. Saudi Arabia using arrest to scare online critics. Again, this is pre-possible uprising and change of a regime there in Saudi Arabia. They say the Government targets internet commentators and journalists to try and crush talk of reforms. Well, the same thing happens everywhere where else. Like I said, they're dealing with Bahrain, who shoots people. So when they protest, I don't even know if they really can officially protest. The U.S. government's dealing with them, So, but we covered it. Yemen too. Yemen may be on the throes. They're in the news a lot, so they could be on the docket for a regime change or a possible coup. Speaking of coups, South Sudan, they just supposedly almost had one. South Sudan says order restored after 500 killed. The UN's concerned, of course, because, like I said, that's got their eyes set on their sights set on Africa. The UN is actually supporting, backing peacekeepers and stuff in Africa, in Mali or Central African Republic, maybe both, but 13,000 flee homes in South Sudan, says UN, so you can see the case they're trying to make. UK withdraws embassy staff in South Sudan. The European states to send troops to Caire, so the European states, says France. 1,600 strong French forces to Caire or Car. And also you have the U.S. actually providing air support, transporting troops. I believe it's pronounced Burmundi, but this is Central America. But they have Marines units and Army units created and dispatched working with AFRICOM. So they're really building up the infrastructure there, trying to get more drone bases. Japan boosts military forces to counter China. So I'm sure it has more to do with the economic blocks. And the exact number was $240 billion worth of high-tech weapons. And so this is good for the defense industry, but it's also being approved, I believe, by the U.S. Chinese rover, we're talking about landing on the moon, shows Europe being nuked. So that's a little, what's the word, precarious? Between the Obama regime's rebuilding plans and Britain's notorious Trident, the lesson of nuclear weapons is that no matter how much money has been wasted on them, nations can always think of excuses to waste billions more building newer versions of weapons whose use is unthinkable. So Russia is going to spend billions on new ICBMs. Says the concern about such weapons not working past their shelf life is being used to justify the expenses. Says, but as a practical matter, the U.S. and Russia both have nuclear arsenals capable of wiping out the entire human race several times over, so the prospect that a few might not work seems a pointless worry. Or overkill too, but Russia plans rail-mounted missiles to counter U.S. global strike program. This is coming from Novosti. But who knows? They probably already have it. Yeah, I think they have a pretty decent rail system out there, and it's something that's already been conceptualized. Rail guns. North Korea preparing to carry out new nuclear tests. At least that's what they're saying. There's a second anniversary of the death of his father. Remember, they just killed one of the higher-ups, executed him. Remember I said, well, I could see them sending over their agent, their liaison, Dennis Rodman. Hey, Dennis Rodman heads to North Korea despite execution, political purge. So this guy's definitely a spook or something. It's funny because you'll have people that will read that and be like, like that are, they'll say, oh, yeah, damn that Rodman, he's a damn communist. Let him have him. It's like, no, I don't think that's how it's working. I think he's kind of like his dad. He's there to basically rabble-rouse and stuff and get people on Fox News and CNN all scared. The U.S. is going to deploy their ABM systems in Europe despite the P5+1 talks with Iran. So, news came as Russia confirmed the deployment of these missiles, Iskander missiles, bordering the EU. The U.S. tests another nuclear-capable missile. They test-fired a nuclear-capable intercontinental ballistic missile from an airbase in California. Yeah, it went 4,200 miles. All this missile talk, I might as well mention, I had a dream last night that I was in Saudi Arabia, I think it was, somewhere in the hot desert, and Eddie Murphy was in it, and we were in this protective cage. At least I felt protected in there from all these people that were starting to come, except he left one of the other doors open, and then when that happened, all of a sudden, this nuclear bomb went off. And then when I jump out the window, there's this kid, and he's dressed as like a hamburger, some kind of food, and he's like sledding down this sandhill, and I was like, looking, I was like, you're an idiot. And I woke up, so interpret that. And as a protest, Obama sends a signal to Russia and the Olympics by sending two gays to the delegation. So there you go. Thank you.